spelling, vocabulary, grammar, embedding quotes, what tense you're using. There's a whole laundry list of common errors students make in writing. So let's flesh out each one today so that by the end of this video, you know what you need to do in order to avoid all of those errors. Hey, if you're new to this channel, I'm Lisa. I'm an English guru, as some say. I own Lisa Study Guides, a private tutoring company that looks after year 9s through to year 12s here in Victoria, Australia for VCE. But if you're not one of those students, this channel is all about English writing and analyzing text, so go on and subscribe if you're interested in getting more. Let's talk about spelling. So whenever writing an essay, just make sure that the author and characters' names are spelled correctly. So if you have a character or an author's name that is a little bit more complicated, make sure you actually commit it to memory, because that's going to stand out like a sore thumb, because you're going to be writing those names over and over again in an essay. So you just want to be able to get it right so that you can get it right every single time, rather than having that mistake pop up over and over again, which is a bit of an eyesore for your teacher, to be honest. This is a super easy way just to clean up your essay and ensure that you have the best chances of getting those top marks. Next, let's talk about vocabulary. So I've done a video on this before where I've talked about how students tend to use big fancy words, nice sounding or sophisticated sounding words. I used to actually do this myself, but what they don't actually realize is that by trying to stuff your essays with this fancy vocabulary, often a lot of times you're actually using those words in the wrong context. So it's not as just easy as just looking up that word, finding the thesaurus for it, and finding some synonyms. Synonyms? I wouldn't mind some cinnamon donuts. I meant synonyms. So while it's still a great idea for you to grow your vocabulary, you just want to make sure that that new word that you're using in place of your old word actually makes sense, because words have connotations, and words, even though they are synonyms, will be slightly different in terms of their meaning. So a really good example is, say, the two words beautiful and pretty. So you can often hear these two being used interchangeably. You know, that person looks beautiful, that person looks pretty, but they have slightly different connotations and meanings associated with them. Someone who is more beautiful seems to have more of that regal, more sophisticated vibe to them, and being beautiful is something that can go beyond that, just that surface level, you know, what your face looks like. It could be also be that beautiful personality. Whereas when you say someone's pretty, you typically don't say that somebody's personality is pretty. It's very much more of that surface material, vanity explanation for somebody. So if you want to know more about this, then make sure you go and watch that video I've linked up above. Grammar. Make sure you do simple things like using capital letters for proper nouns, full stops where there need to be full stops, and even commas. Sometimes it's just this simple attention to detail that's going to help your assessor look at your writing and go, wow, this student knows what they're doing. Whereas if you're missing a few of these marks here and there, even though they are small, they are really important when it comes to English, so make sure that you keep this in mind. Also, as a bonus here, make sure that you're using quotation marks whenever you're quoting something. Writing in active versus writing in passive voice. So an example of an active voice is the student wrote the essay, whereas a passive voice is the essay was written by the student. Whenever writing for an audience, you always want to be writing in active voice. It's standard practice, and it actually makes it easier for the other person reading your essay to understand what you're saying. If we can make things easier for the other person, then why not do that? The next one is a super common one that I see in a lot of our private tutoring students at Lisa Study Guides in year 11s and year 12. So these are the students who are about to graduate high school and they still really struggle with this issue. So if you're somebody who is in a younger year level, make sure you get on top of this sooner. But that's independent clauses and dependent clauses. Let me give you an example. Every time a dependent clause is used, an independent clause needs to be present as well. So a dependent clause is essentially a clause that does not express a complete thought and cannot stand on its own. For example, because he injured his foot is a dependent clause. You need to have a section before that to make it a complete sentence. Let me give you another example. Hence, implying that courage can serve as a coping mechanism to alleviate fear. So the main subject in this sentence is actually missing. Who or what actually implies the courage? So to rework this, to add that independent clause, it would be, Hence, the author, that's the independent clause, implies that courage can serve as a coping mechanism to alleviate fear. So that last bit is a dependent clause. You got this. Next is not embedding quotes properly. Sometimes you have quotes just sitting in the middle of a paragraph as its own sentence without context or any analysis surrounding it, so it looks really awkward. Here's an example of a poor analysis and embedding of a quote. Zach in Cozy Fan Toot is a character who represents the theme of sanity and madness. I can't stand real things. If I could put up with reality, I wouldn't be here. This suggests ... So here's an example of how it should be done. Zach in Cozy Fan Toot, Roy is depicted as delusional and obsessed with creating a masterpiece out of Cozy Fan Toot that aligns with his dream and vision. Simultaneously, he is shown to be self-righteous, taking control of Lewis's direction and asserting that his instinct is always right. Similarly, Nick is denounced as an egotistical pig who likes the sound of his own voice and is so enthralled with his moratorium that he fails to see his hubristic nature. See how in this later example, the quotes themselves are actually embedded within your sentences. They make up the sentences themselves rather than sitting on their own. I have a more detailed video about this, so go ahead and watch that if you want to be a badass at quoting. Next is ensuring that the overall point of view and text used throughout the essay is consistent. In Australia, we always want third person present tense. So here's an example of how you can do that. Ruth realizes the subjectivity of reality as she concedes to pretending during Cozy Fan Toot, explaining that it wasn't her, it was the character. So third person means she, he, they, his, her. Here's an example of how it shouldn't be done. Ruth realized the subjectivity of the reality as she was conceded to have pretended. This is all past tense. So if you're unsure, just double check with your teacher what tense they want you to write from and from which perspective. We always want third person, but your teacher may want you, especially for creative writing, let's say, or even persuasive writing, to write in first person, which means I, me, we, our, us, and sometimes even second person perspective, which is you. Next is beware of homophones. This one's a really good one. So it's when words sound the same, but actually written in a different way, and they actually have different meanings. So common homophones include affect and effect, complement and complement, illusion and illusion. So if you guys know the differences between these homophones, please write them down in the comment section below. So this should give you a really good idea on how you can actually improve on your common writing mistakes so that you can get better at English. And if you're somebody who's keen to really boost your marks, then I highly recommend that you go and download our free LSG 3-step signature program for English success. So in this course, there are a series of videos where I run you through the 3 common mistakes that students make in English, what you can do to avoid making those mistakes, and what you should be doing instead. So I'll link that up above for you and also in the description box below. That's it for today. I hope you guys found that helpful. If you did, make sure you like it and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!